calling to order the Mariana Islands Legislature Association, known as MILA, our first inaugural meeting. I would like for everyone to please rise for the recitation of the Inifresi and Prinimeti. And if I can ask Senator Tom Atta to lead us in the Inifresi, and Senator Jovi to please lead us in the Prinimeti.
Gininimas takilo, gihinasoko, imas takulum, ikurasonhu, zanimas figu, naninas inyahu, uafresin maisatil, para bayu protehi, zalu defendi, iyengi, ikultura, ilenguahi, iaili, ihanum, zanitanum tomoro. Ni shaku lesu gininazu stata. Esi hua fitma gihilu I Biblia dan ibanderahu ibandera Guahan.
Manhulatu Fed Gipapa ibanderahu Noti Marianas Nabaihu Towi Todo Ininazinyahu para ihinengi ikutura ilinguahi iairi ihanum zanitanu Inifreseku gininastu stata para todo y generación tomorrow pago para todo y tiempo.
Thank you very much. And please remain standing for the national anthem, the Guam anthem, and the Sinamay hymn.
Dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land
very much. You all may be seated. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our first inaugural MILA meeting in Guam. President Ralph Torres, Speaker Joseph De Leon Guerrero, members of the 32nd Guam Legislature, and members of the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Island Legislature. Welcome. I welcome everyone to the first Mariana Islands Legislature Association, which we refer to as MILA, our first general meeting, our inaugural meeting, our assembly that's co-chaired by Senator Rory Spicer, our majority leader, and myself. I particularly want to thank the senatorial staff and the central staff of the Guam Legislature who worked really hard to organize this event. Our coming together today in the Antonio R. Umpinku Session Hall signifies that both legislative bodies recognize the value of an alliance of our island communities working together to solve mutual concerns and advance common interests. This assembly would help us to better understand the issues that are most important to the future of our communities. And if you have may noticed, I have said first assembly because I do hope that this will be the first of many assemblies that will identify new areas of cooperation beyond that exists today, notably by enhancing political dialogue and undertaking initiatives aimed at creating new links between our respective communities. We must continue to engage each other in this way because our islands are inextricably connected by our geographic proximity, the close ties of our citizens, and a binding culture, heritage, tradition, history, and language. The theme of MILA's first General Assembly is Marianas First. Motna Marianas is a reminder that our islands are connected. For the next 2 days, we will discuss cooperative efforts in the areas to include trade between Guam and CNMI, cruise liners, and healthcare. By addressing these Marianas issues, we are strengthening our islands to ensure long-term sustainability of our deep-rooted partnership. May our time together evoke cooperation among elected officials of our government, together with the Sage Council, advice, and contribution of key members in our community. We will continue to improve the quality of life, relationships, and future of our island communities. And at this time, I would like to also ask if President Ralph Torres can give us a welcoming remarks, and also Speaker Joe De Leon Guerrero to do likewise.
Been from Saipan. Kuna si Diyos masi, no nayami sti dong kuna put. Mifangagi gwini. Fandanya kumu uno na Marianas zata akudi mona I afatana sita sumogi sa manunggi zolokyo na zangin man unit na kurason sinya ta man medgudit mona za istena zomu invitation chair dan todi senador undang khusus masih dan malazatana molig mona I karirata gini na summit again undang khusus masih dan buenos dias.
Thank you, Senate President. Buenas and saludas, Speaker Wampat, Vice Speaker BJ Cruz, Senator Rory Respicio, the Majority Leader, Senators from the MILA 32 na Legislaturan Guahan, the CNMI Senate President, is a delegation of senators from the CNMI. Before I begin, I would also like to introduce members from the 18th NMI House of Representatives who have joined us today. And when I introduce you, if you don't mind just maybe raising your hand, let me start with the chairman of the Standing Committee on Ways and Means, Representative Antonio Sablan. The chairman on the Standing Committee on Judiciary and Governmental Operations, JGO, Representative Chris Leon Guerrero. Chairman on the Standing Committee on Natural Resources, Representative Tony Beneventi. And his vice chairman of the Committee on Natural Resources, Representative John Paul Sablan. We have the chairman on the Standing Committee on Tourism, Representative Ralph Yumo. And the chairman on the Special Committee on Retirement, Representative Mariano Taitano. We also had one other member who was supposed to join us. He may be dropping by later on, Representative Richard Seman. Thank you again. On behalf of the House delegation, let me start by extending our appreciation and congratulations to you, Madam Speaker, the co-chair, Senator Rory Respicio, and all of the senators from the MILA 32 na Legislaturan Guam for taking the lead to host the first ever Mariana Island Legislature Association General Assembly. The speaker said MILA, I like to think of it as MILA, as you have invited us to Guam. So, you know, I'm not sure who started the idea for the MILA or how far back discussions began between members of our legislature. I do know it's a long way back. I do know that in January of 2010, our former speaker and former Lieutenant Governor Diego Beneventi, who by the way is Representative Tony Beneventi's brother, introduced House Joint Resolution 17-1, which initiated the intent to create this legislative alliance. In June of 2012, Guam followed suit with the passage of Resolution 375-31, which also supported the creation of MILA. You know, when I was talking to Diego and asking him how this came to be and why it took so long to get this far, he told me that, you know, in the past, the CNMI always had their elections on odd-numbered years, and Guam was aligned with the national elections during even-numbered years. And so the leaders of the time would talk about it, but since there was an election every year, before they can get around to doing anything, there was a turnover of members, so they could never reach, I guess, get a consensus. However, in 2009, we also changed our election law, and now it's also during even-numbered years. That was because U.S. Congress gave us the non-voting delegate. And so if we didn't change it, we'd be having elections every year in the CNMI. And so that change kind of gave us a stable platform, if you will. And I think that's how things finally move forward. The intent of House Joint Resolution 17-1 and Resolution 375-31 was to promote dialogue between our legislatures, to identify challenges confronting our islands, and to explore opportunities for mutual cooperation and solutions. For this inaugural session, the House raised several relatively minor issues which may not rise to the level of legislative concerns. However, they are issues that can open greater opportunities for the benefit of both our peoples. For instance, just a simple amendment to the Guam Department of Agriculture animal quarantine regulations will allow live cattle to be brought into Guam from the CNMI. And we understand that cattle ranchers here want to infuse new bloodlines, and so they trying to get exchange and breeding opportunities. At the same time, our ranchers there also want a bigger market. So this is one of those opportunities for win-win situation. And so these kind of small, albeit small, but I think meaningful opportunities for our people can have direct benefits to both our islands. There are larger issues or concerns that we now share, such as the proposed military buildup and the uncertainty of national policies potentially affecting our efforts to secure and develop tourist markets such as China and Russia. We in the CNMI recognize Guam's extensive experience in dealing with the military and the federal government, and through continued dialogue, we hope to learn from your experiences and your understanding of the issues. Lastly, I'm sure that there are people out there on both sides of the water who are wondering whether the topic of reunification would be discussed in this assembly. Personally, I feel that before we even begin to entertain that topic, we should take small steps first, address issues directly affecting our people, improve on our relationships both in the public and in the private sector, and we should develop our understanding and appreciation of each jurisdiction's respective concerns and desires. Recently the governor of Guam was in the CNMI to discuss with our governor areas of mutual concerns. We understand that at the municipal level, our mayors have also joined and created the AMIM, or Association of Mariana Islands Mayors. And with this inaugural assembly of the Mariana Islands Legislatures Association, it is yet another step in forging stronger ties between our islands. Our common link has always been our language and our culture. Our culture of respect, or respeto, has always been the foundation for building any relationship. Madam Speaker, we hope this will be the start of a good working relationship built on respect and cooperation for years to come. Con respeto, si Jus Masi, Madam Speaker, and fellow senators from the island of Guahan.
Thank you very much. At this time, I would like to introduce the members of the 32nd Guam legislature. And at the same time, I'd like to go ahead and mention at least the chairpersons and the different committees that they chair, just in case you may want to connect with any one of them. And if I may, Vice Speaker B.J. Cruz, if you can just please raise your hands, everybody will recognize you. And he chairs the Committee on General Government Operation and Cultural Affairs. Senator Tina Rose Munya Barnes, who is the Legislative Secretary, she chairs the Committee on Municipal Affairs, Tourism, Housing, and Hagatna Restoration and Redevelopment Authority. The Majority Leader, who is Senator Rory Respicio, he chairs the Committee on Rules, Federal, Foreign, and Micronesian Affairs, Human and Natural Resources, and Election Reform. Senator Tom Adda, he chairs the Committee on Public Safety, Infrastructure, and Maritime Transportation. Former Speaker Ben Pangilinan chairs the Committee on Appropriations, Public Debt, Legal Affairs, Retirement, Public Parks, Recreation, Historic Preservation, and Land. Senator Frank Uggan Jr. He's the Committee Chair on Guam U.S. Military Relocation, Homeland Security, Veterans Affairs, and Judiciary. Senator Mike San Nicolas, he chairs the Committee on Aviation, Ground Transportation, Regulatory Concerns, and Future Generations. And I'd like to also introduce other members in the minority party, and the chairman, the minority leader. Well, he is a vice chair, as a matter of fact. He's the minority leader for the Republican Party, and that's Tony Adda, and he's also a vice chair of, and he's not here, that's why I didn't give the committee, but I'll also do that so that then you'll know the Committee on Health. Where is he? Wait, Senator Rodriguez, I know is not here, but Senator Rodriguez is the Committee Chair on Health and Human Services, Health Insurance Reform, Economic Development, and Senior Citizens, and Senator Tony Adda is also his Vice Chair. Senator, why am I having a senior moment? Senator Chris Duenas, and he's also a member of APIL, the Association of Pacific Island Legislatures. Senator Aline Yamashita, she is, well, I chair the Committee on Education, Public Library, and Women's Affairs, and Senator Yamashita is also the Vice Chair of the Education Committee. And to her far right is Senator Tommy Morrison, also with the Minority Party. And all of the senators all belong to, rather are members of all of the standing committees. So did I leave anybody out? Okay, so moving right along, and what I'd like to do now is to turn over this part of the discussion to my co-chair, Senator Rory Respicio, who also has oversight of the topic that we are going to discuss this afternoon on free trade. Senator?
Thank you, Madam Speaker, Mr. President Torres, and Mr. Speaker Dilian Guerrero. Buenas and Afade. We have this afternoon session, we've jointly decided, both the CNMI and Guam's Working Committee, to discuss free trade. And we in Guam and the CNMI have shared a geography, although history and international politics have created barriers between our two communities. One of our goals of this Congress is to explore ways in which we can break down these barriers to the mutual benefit of both Guam and the CNMI. In particular, in this session, we hope to facilitate discussion on the opportunities to promote more trade and economic activity between our two island communities and the obstacles that may exist in capitalizing on those opportunities. This work is already happening in both the public and private sectors, as evidenced by last July's visit by the Saipan Chamber of Commerce trade delegation to entice companies already doing business in Guam, such as franchises, to expand to the Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas. And so in this afternoon session, we'd like to invite up Chief Rafael Scambaluri from Customs, Mr. Vincent S.N. Perez, the Assistant Chief for Guam Customs, the Director of Guam Customs, Mr. Pedro A. Leon Guerrero, and our Acting Director of the Department of Agriculture, Mr. John C. Borja. And you have, Mr. Speaker, you want to invite those from CNMI?
Thank you, Chair. We have with us our State Veterinarian, Dr. De La Cruz. Would you please join us? And also Mr. Ernie Torres, who is one of our largest cattle ranchers in the CNMI, who is, by the way, from Guam originally. He's transplanted now.
Can you please just state your name for the record?
Thank you, Senator. For the record, my name is Pedro A. Leon. I am the Director of Guam Customs and Quarantine, Agency of Guam.
Good afternoon. My name is Chief Ralph Scambaluri. I'm the Chief of Guam Customs and Quarantine.
Good afternoon. I am Major Vincent S. Perez. I am the Division Chief for the Infectious Disease of Guam Customs.
Good afternoon. My name is Ernie Torres, originally from Guam. I'm one of the largest livestock producers on Saipan, but I am from Guam.
Good afternoon. My name is John C. Borja. I'm the Acting Director for the Department of Agriculture.
Good afternoon, buenas and half a day. My name is Dr. Ignacio T. De La Cruz. I am the CNMI State Veterinarian.
Thank you again. Over the next 2 hours, you can see from the agenda, we have 5 different items. And so what we are going to do is maybe allocate 20 to 25 minutes per item. And as we discussed, there's no really formal structure here. Feel free to jump in whenever you can feel that you can participate in that discussion and offer your perspective. On the first item on the agenda, Madam Speaker, Mr. President and Speaker, the opportunities and obstacles. For purposes of producing a more productive discussion, we have drafted an agenda for this forum that focuses on the salient topics which seem to be of most interest to members of both our legislatures. We can add on to it as the afternoon progresses, but if it is acceptable to everyone here, we will begin by focusing on 4 specific subjects. Discussions, both the opportunities and obstacles to increase trade between the CNMI and Guam, inter-island air travel, agriculture, produce, livestock and animal products, and coordinated tourism marketing strategies. As I've said, we can add other subjects if there are further suggestions. Also, as you are aware, cruise liners will be discussed in a separate forum tomorrow. On the issue of inter-island air travel, this subject is always of interest because increased air service helps facilitate business activities when people are better able to move more easily between our island communities. Tourism is also positively impacted by air links, but so are other types of trade. We know that in the CNMI, Arctic Air Cargo, also known as Mariana's Harvest, has just started with a focus on transporting agricultural products. Perhaps members of the CNMI delegation could give us an update on how that enterprise is doing. And also, we understand there are plans for a $15 per person travel promotion fee to be implemented in 2012, and if that will have an effect on inter-island tourism. On the area of agricultural produce, both the CNMI and Guam are historically agricultural communities, and farming remains a significant component in both our economies. 2 years ago, the Association of the Mariana Islands Mayors, Vice Mayors, and Elected Municipal Council Members, or AMIM, during its meeting at the Northern Marianas College Library on Rhoda, discussed Guam's increased need for fruits and plants due to the military buildup. There was also discussion of establishing a free trade zone for agricultural products. For us as legislators, I think that remains a goal for us as well. And here in Guam, and perhaps also for the CNMI, a major impediment in creating a viable fruit and vegetable export industry in Guam is the presence of destructive pests that thrive in tropical regions. In past years, fumigation with pesticides was used, but those methods can be harmful to humans and have been replaced with processes that are safe and reliable. One alternative we have been examining, colleagues, as an effective and environmentally sound method is known as a vapor heat treatment, or a VHT, which uses hot, saturated water vapor rather than chemicals. Temperature and humidity are carefully controlled during the VHT process so that produce is not damaged and freshness is preserved. The VAT has also been used for decades and is a proven and safe way to treat fruits and vegetables so that they pass quarantine inspections and enable the produce to be exported. The United States Department of Agriculture, or the USDA, has made this system available for use by Guam's Department of Agriculture. The implementation of this system may help not only inter-island trade here in the Marianas, but also trades in Asia as well. And on the area of livestock and animal products, your folders have considerable material on subject of the trade in livestock between our two island communities. Of particular interest, apparently, is the requirement in Guam for a test for Anaplasmosis in the Guam Livestock Import Protocol. Guam's territorial veterinarian has expressed a strong view that the test should continue. And let me note that in your packet is a letter from Dr. Mark S. Thorne, the State Range and Livestock Extension Specialist from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. His letter recommends elimination of this test. Is there anyone from the CNMI delegation who can speak to these and other issues? So, Madam Speaker, I guess we give an opportunity for CNMI to give a general overview on these 5 topics, and then we can give Guam the same opportunity, and we have the privilege of having our government officials here to kind of guide in this discussion, if that's acceptable.
If there's no objection, I wanted to turn over the mic to our CNMI veterinarian, Dr. Ignacio de la Cruz, to kind of touch on the Anaplasmosis issue, the live cattle export. Doc.
Thank you, Speaker De Leon Guerrero. I'm just going to read something that I had prepared and that I had addressed to Speaker De Leon Guerrero for the benefit of all of you that are present here. First of all, thank you, Madam Chair, and all the members of this inaugural MILA Congress. I am very happy for the opportunity afforded us by you and your esteemed MILA Inaugural Congress in the 32nd Guam Legislature and the 18th CNMI Legislature to present our concerns regarding the pressing need to facilitate the movement of CNMI livestock into Guam. The real issue is how to ship or transport CNMI cattle into Guam without testing for bovine anaplasmosis, which is a disease in cattle that is long established in both territories. Anaplasmosis testing is presently required as a condition of entry by the Guam Department of Agriculture as specified in your animal quarantine regulations. Only animals that test negative are eligible for entry. Our farmers and ranchers, as well as those in Guam, would like to enhance and facilitate the movement of CNMI cattle to Guam, where a serious inbreeding problem is widely evident. This condition has been causing unnecessary, unwelcome, and unwanted productive and reproductive problems and failures in the Guam cattle population. The productive qualities of CNMI cattle have tremendously improved due to the practice of artificial insemination using frozen semen imported from the U.S. mainland. For a long time, Guam quarantine regulations practically prohibited the importation of semen from the mainland until only recently. Thus, allowing CNMI cattle with proven superior genetic characteristics to enter Guam would jumpstart and advance and greatly improve the productive qualities of Guam cattle. This would immediately start to promote your agricultural economy and at the same time would benefit CNMI ranchers as it would provide a large market for CNMI livestock. What is highly recommended to make this happen is to review Guam's animal quarantine regulations and propose phasing out entry requirements and conditions that are no longer considered essential, are overly and unnecessarily restrictive, or not performing their intended purpose. To resolve the current deadlock in the interstate movement of cattle, existing regulations need to be updated as expeditiously as possible and to remove testing requirements for diseases such as bovine anaplasmosis, which is a cattle disease that is endemic, meaning established or present on Guam and the CNMI. This is especially relevant since Guam does not have any ongoing control and eradication program for this particular disease. Without relevant and quick changes in Guam's animal quarantine regulations, Guam ranchers and farmers will continue to be unnecessarily penalized because their livestock would remain highly inbred, less productive, and continue to do poorly in reproductive performance. Nobody would suffer more than the Guam ranchers and farmers. CNMI producers would also continue to suffer because they are being denied the opportunity to export their animals to Guam, where ranchers stand to benefit the most from the high-quality breeds readily available on Saipan and the CNMI through ongoing, highly successful artificial insemination program. Because bovine anaplasmosis is no longer considered by the United States Department of Agriculture as a cattle disease of major importance, and because it is already established in Guam, and because it is no longer relevant to the protective intent of existing quarantine regulations, it is time to revisit and update Guam's regulations and to remove the anaplasmosis testing requirement or to waive it. These effects will undoubtedly serve the best interests of the Guam and CNMI ranchers by serving as an economic stimulus, boosting productivity, and benefiting all the Marianas people in the process. It is hoped that at this, your inaugural session of MILA, you will give this matter your utmost attention and consideration for a real change and positive action. Viva Marianas. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Maybe we can get a response from the Department of Agriculture. We are aware of some recent email exchanges and the territorial vet's position on this issue. You've heard Dr. De La Cruz suggest that maybe Guam needs to update its animal rules and regulations. John?
That is correct, Mr. Chair, and that's basically where we're at to review such regulations so it can be amended so that we can become one importers and exporters of the cattle industry.
Is your acting director of agriculture right now? Is it your department's position that that's something that's doable?
Yes, we're looking at two sides of the coin here. One is that we're standing behind what is already written in law regulation, and that if it requires a testing, yes, we have to follow what is
Well,
required.
notwithstanding what the law says, because that's what we're trying to do
Right.
today, is
So-
facilitate some discussion that says, is there any merit to updating our animal rules and regulations to where this Anaplasmosis testing is not required?
Right. On the other side of that coin is that if there's some new technology or some kind of research that came out from what Dr. De La Cruz had mentioned, then we will look at that and put it into perspective as to what we can do to make that arrangement, to make it happen, to make it realistic on the ground, rather than just being a theory or something that's not realistic. To make it eventful for one thing, but however, we also want to caution because we had other issues with other introduced types of unwanted diseases. But yes, we all understood that there's need to be a review and working with the CNMI to come about to make changes to the law.
Mr. President? Yeah, thank you, Director, Acting Director.
Thank you very much. And just a little, I just wanted to see if we could, while we're looking at the cattle issue, can we also look at other livestock, since we're gonna go ahead and address that, and livestock is, the cattle is our biggest concern, but I know that there's other livestock that we would like to open up, so if we can also address the others, whatever the barriers that we have, and we can have Doc and the department look into it. Thank you.
Definitely. Let's look and see what other potential we have for their livestock, like goats, swine, and even horses. Thank you.
And maybe we should get the CNMI's animal rules and regulations so that there could be some reciprocity. Dr. De La Cruz, thank you for your statement, and we recognize, all of us recognize your willingness to kind of help guide us on that issue. When was the last time CNMI updated its animal rules and regulations?
It's been a while,
Okay.
but we are always ready to waive quarantine requirements that are no longer doing its intended purpose. And that's what we were doing in the past with the former territorial veterinarian of Guam, Dr. Nussbaum, Stephen Nussbaum. And, you know, things were going very well during that time. And I would like to also mention the requirement for testing for blue tongue in cattle, goats. I don't think that requirement is necessary, and that should also be addressed and hopefully taken out from the Guam regulations. Yeah. And the third one is Newcastle vaccination in poultry. You know, this disease is common in both areas, both jurisdictions, both territories, so I don't think the need to do that should be in the books and should be required. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah.
Madam Speaker?
Thank you very much. I think for the purpose of the members who are here, because this is a very new term to us, considering the anaplasmosis, and can you, in your capacity at least, enlighten us in terms of exactly how does, the bull or cattle, become inflicted with this, and the little that I read, of course, it's not enough, but I'm sure you can enlighten us, because then after that I have just another question to ask.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Way back during Governor Bill Daniels' time, governor from Texas of Guam, different breeds of very good quality cattle was shipped to Guam. And I believe that was the beginning of this disease, the anaplasmosis, and maybe even blue tongue. But anaplasmosis is a rickettsial blood parasite. It's a bacterial parasite that attacks the red blood cells of, especially in cattle. There are different kinds of species of anaplasma, But the ones we are particularly concerned about are Anaplasma marginale and to a smaller degree Anaplasma centrale. Yeah, I mean Anaplasma marginale and Anaplasma centrale. But the ones of most important is Anaplasma marginale, which is present both in Guam and the CNMI. In a place where this disease is not present, there can be a lot of big problems and there can be a lot of deaths resulting from this disease. But in a place like Guam and the CNMI, where the disease is already long established, it's not a problem. What would be a problem is to bring in naive cattle from the mainland or from Hawaii, and then once introduced and become infected, then the Guam rancher that imports that cow or bull or cattle will break down with the disease and may die. So for Guam and the CNMI, the movement of cattle is testing for this disease is irrelevant and should not be a requirement because it has no protective intent, no protective value. It would only slow, the movement of cattle from one jurisdiction to the other. So it is high time that this requirement for testing for anaplasmosis be removed, as an interstate movement requirement. And that would facilitate the trade between the two jurisdictions. Yeah, we'll be able to ship cattle without too much problem. And we won't be spending a lot of money testing for a disease that is not necessary, it's not no longer important to Guam. Yeah, and it has no protective value whatsoever, I would say. Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. In your packet, we've included a study that was done, I know, in 1999. And if you look on page 11 of that document where it says anaplasmosis, that the tick vectors for anaplasmosis and babesiosis are present on Guam, but clinical anaplasmosis has not been reported on Guam. However, positive titers demonstrate the presence of the organism. And I know you said that both islands have it, but then, and the cattle has been separated. And through time, of course, the strain could be stronger or weaker. We don't know that. In the United States, because it's contiguous, and of course, they don't have the regulation because they move among each other. But here we're talking about islands isolated of each other, and we just don't know what the strain is. We don't know, like you said, there could be shipping from other places, could probably produce a stronger strain or whatever. And by the same token, tests that haven't been done could then we have the same thing that you just predicted or assume could happen if it came from any other place from off island. Can you please help me understand this a little bit more? Because I understand regulations are there for a reason. However, you're right. I know both the cattle, population both here in Guam, both have them. I'm just trying to make sure, of course, is that if regulations are naturally outdated or they need to be advanced, and I'm sure that there must be other studies or other types of treatment that could actually take place since 1999.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Addressing the anaplasmosis problem, in an area where the disease is already present, is not necessary. Now, in fact, for Guam to introduce naive cattle from the mainland, in other words, cattle that are free of the disease, that incoming cattle must be vaccinated for anaplasmosis in the state of origin, or at its arrival here in Guam, it must be treated once it breaks down with the disease, because the disease is already present. In the mainland, anaplasmosis is common in the southern states. However, there are some states, and Georgia for one, does require cattle that are free of anaplasmosis from entering their state. And I don't know what is the reason why they are requiring that, but maybe they don't have the disease in that state, yeah. But for Guam and the CNMI to require it is absolutely unnecessary.
Yeah, we want to give an opportunity to maybe Customs and Quarantine, if you have any comments.
Thank you, Senator. Maybe there's a missing component here. I know the Department of Agriculture is here, but we need the Guam territorial vet here. That will be a great help within the two vets from the Northern Marianas and Guam to get together and have this dialogue here, this roundtable.
Yeah, he was invited, but he's off island at the moment. But certainly we've already established that the protocol will be that CNMI and Guam will get together and see how we can update this animal rules and regulations, and so that way there can be reciprocity.
Or even the University of Guam.
Yeah. Okay, and also Mr. Speaker?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on, Chairman, that in the event that our two vets get together and find that there is no longer need for this testing, which would require an amendment to the regulations, the animal quarantine regulations, I think it would also, the process to amend the regulations would require some kind of adoption by the Guam legislature, right? And so that's also something we come here to ask is, of course, we do give the experts the opportunity to, make sure everything is in order and there's no serious concerns that would be, make sure they can work it out. And then, of course, we ask for your assistance also to get the regulations approved once it comes in front of you. Thank you.
I'd just like to add that we've been actually communicating with the governors, one of the governor's legal staff, Mr. Paris, and I understand that they've communicated with you as well. So they've asked us, to at least discuss it, to talk about the possibility of, like you said, a waiver or an amendment, a deletion, what have you, but that they, through our territorial veterinarian and yourself, hopefully, and with the Department of Agriculture, should have this conversation and make the recommendation then to not just the Guam legislature, but to yours as well. Okay, thank you.
Just a quick question, Doc. Do we still require that testing from Guam coming into the CNMI?
No, we're not requiring it. And if it's still in the books, then we are waiving that requirement because it's no longer necessary. Yeah. And like Madam Chair said, when was the last time we updated our recs? And it's about time we have to revisit our own recs, the CNMA recs. Yeah, thank you.
Well, Doc, please get back to us if it is not yet updated and if it is still in the books. And I think we also would like to reciprocate, since we also have the disease in the CNMI, and wipe it off the books.
So be it, the Speaker Dylan Guerrero. Thank you.
I think this is a first MILA opportunity to have one protocol on the updating of the animal quarantine rules and regs, and so that it shows that Guam and the CNMI Guam have the same standard. And so I guess the question, Madam Speaker, Mr. President Speaker, is are we in agreement with how to proceed with this particular issue? Colleagues? Any comments from?
So ask the departments, the whatever that's going on, like in the U.S. that is required to Guam, make sure that you also require that both, so that if it's not just one, and also see what kind of disease that's floating around in the States, and perhaps try to also include that to prevent any further diseases entering both islands. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead,
This has been going on for so many years. Can we include a timeline when this is going to be done?
I want to defer to the Department of Agriculture for that first response, because you did indicate that you're in the process of updating these rules and regs.
Mr. Chair, yes. What it is that I was involved with some of the meetings, and the discussion was on table. And yes, definitely, we're going to have to go back and, like what CNMA is doing, look at the books and see what needs to be changed and what applies now and what doesn't apply.
Speaker Ben?
Yeah, can you just concentrate on that part of the book on Anaplasmosis? Never mind all the other pages, just that one page.
That will be the hot topic. That will be the one thing that we're going to look at.
Yeah. I say that because, you know, I know Ernie's father. We started artificial insemination program back in the early 90s under the administration of Governor Ricky Bordallo, the Green Revolution. We actually bought all of these straws, as they're called, containing the semen from that. And the idea was we upgrade the genetic strain and the quality of the livestock on Guam to produce, you know, better quality of beef. We went in through that program. We were able to do that locally, hoping to expand it to increase trade. And we never got to that page of the book maybe, but the restrictions still exist today even. And as a result, Ernie kind of like moved from here up to Saipan to farm up there. And I remember I used to write an article, and I wrote I write a column, Ernie, and I'll dig it up, but I did write about your effort to export live cattle from the CNMI here, and how the restrictions here forced you to instead ship those same cattle to Palau instead. And that was able to, that was, one of the first times in terms of exporting. But, shipping to Palau, I don't know how many thousands of miles away versus the CNMI, and here, 200 miles away, just doesn't make sense that we need to do that. And so I think if we just, if that is the one thing at this time, which appears to be, that restricts the shipment of these cattle between the two, then never mind the other pages of that book. Let's just get rid of this page and then move forward. And it should be fairly simple, I think.
And if it's true that the CNMI has the authority to waive these testing requirements, it's possible that Guam may also have that same authority. And so if we can do something immediate and then work on updating the rules and regs, that's something that we should all aspire to do. Maybe I can ask the CNMI veterinarian if you believe, Dr. De La Cruz, that Guam can waive that testing requirement?
Yes, I believe it's in your books. The Director of Guam Agriculture has that authority. It as written, as presently written, and it can be done maybe tomorrow or day after tomorrow. And yes, that's. I think it can be expedited as
Mr. Bora, like let me ask the Acting Director of Agriculture.
I may be limited to what I can do during my acting position right now, but I will email my director.
Well, why don't you waive it? Then when your director comes back, she can she can undo it.
Then I'll probably have to move to Saipan to greener pastures. But I will address the concern right away with my director.
Okay. Any comments from the CNMI delegation? Any other comments from Guam? Senator Agan?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, everyone. Just a quick question. Obviously, there's going to be reconciliation or cross-check in terms of what the local statutes are, what the local rules and regs are on Guam versus what's already standing in CNMI. I think that obviously we always try to some degree, look at federal rules and regulations also in those procedures. So I certainly hope that we can reach that point where in fact all of them are being applied accordingly. The one question I have, and I hope it's not a sticking point, Mr. Chairman, because obviously we as entire Mariana Islands has yet to reach that threshold of whether in fact it's a 100% go. But we're talking about cattle and the possible trade opportunities to be able to bring those to Guam and then perhaps market them aggressively here. Now, with Tinian being as the chair of the military relocation, this is where I'm coming from. I understand that there's going to be a good portion of the Tinian properties that may be utilized specifically for training opportunities for the military, should it proceed as planned. And I say as planned because obviously we all still have to go through the EIS process. So just based on that, do you anticipate that beyond that timeline of 2020, that the cattle grazing and cattle growing in Tinian will still be as aggressive as it is today because of, in light of some of the land spaces that may have to be given up for some of those training opportunities? Okay, Mr. Chairman, I guess we'll wait until the EIS is done.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In reviewing your Guam animal quarantine regulations, under Chapter 61, Article 1, Page 2, S61102, it says, regulations shall be promulgated in accordance with 60108 of this division to protect Guam agriculture from new plant and animal diseases, so. The director is authorized to modify by making less stringent any prohibitions or restrictions made by such regulations. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, we already got the feedback from the acting director, and like any good acting director, he'll wait for his director, but he'll make sure that unnecessary time will lapse in trying to bring this issue to a closure. Right, John?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And on keeping to the same subject area, can you give us an update, John, on the agricultural produce being imported and exported from Guam and CNMI? This has actually been a topic of the Association of Pacific Island Legislatures for a long time now, and if we could just figure out how to get that vapor heat treatment machine that the USDA purchased for the Department of Agriculture and find some way to have that up and running, that might be the solution to allowing the free flow of these agricultural products. Do you have an update on that?
Yes, Mr. Chair. First of all, there's a person on the ground in Guam right now for the biosecurity conference seminar with the University of Guam. He's from Fiji, and he guaranteed me 2 days ago that he would send a technician or the person responsible for making that machine, which is the high temperature forced air treatment machine. And I personally visited Fiji and saw the operations for the large scale processing of fruits and vegetables, mostly mangoes, eggplants, papayas, and other fruits. In Guam, we have this problem with the melon fly pest. The melon fly pest has pretty much restricted our export of potential lemons as well as other fruit crops with any cavity in it or melons. So what it is that the HTFA is still in a crate. It was a $98,000 equipment purchased by USDA. And what it was when it was purchased, it's like putting the carriage before the horse. There was no feasibility study done to the cost-benefit ratio for the machine to be in play. Just please understand that the machine is not a huge-scale machine that can produce or process 20,000 tons of fruits and vegetables. It's just a small-scale prototype machine that once it's on the ground working, then somebody can pick up the interest to get a bigger machine for larger commercial export. The problem that we ran into was facilitating the machine in regards to a facility. We worked with Farmers Co-op to try to have them take the machine and run with it. They are also having a problem with the feasibility study of the cost benefit for the machine. It costs a lot to also put it together, as well as technicians to train and the scientific research and knowledge of different temperatures to make the usefulness of treating the vegetables or fruits. And also the closeness to a export facility or the airport was one of the things that we're looking at. So we were working on that plan until we found out that we had some kind of understanding that the airport had a property for closeness to the airport and to be able to run the machine, but then we don't have the logistical support or resources to make it happen. We also have the hurdle that we have to go through was to have a scientific study of processing those vegetables and fruits in Guam to produce a schedule that is basically for Guam local and for whatever within the Marianas. The one in Fiji is based on Fiji types of fruits and vegetables plus the vectors, the melon fly, larvae, plus the distance from producing the vegetable, treating it, and exporting it to the next country. The biggest thing, like everything else for export, is the receiving country, whether that country is willing to get that produce with all the required quarantine procedures and regulations. My counterparts, or our counterparts with the USDA APHIS, is that we have identified pest risk, and with my entomologist, Dr. Campbell, we are able to put a list. However, again, it's a lengthy process for one thing, but because of the cost to just get the logistical backing for the machine, we have approached the University of Guam, we have approached the airport, we have approached the GIDA, we even approached DFS regarding whatever is treated or taken in as a product to be exported will become one of the marketable stuff that tourists can bring back home. Maybe mango, pineapples, avocados, or even a fruit of any kind. But the overlying thing is that we have that melon fly pest that is very, very restrictive into what we can export and who is willing to take that product. And that can work fine with us, with the CNMI. We can become a joint outlet for exporting certain products.
And also the benefit of this kind of collaboration at this level would mean that whatever Guam is doing, we'll share that with CNMI, and so they can replicate that same program. And so please be mindful of of that objective for this for our organization. You know, the functions of the plant protection and quarantine were transferred from agriculture to customs. Does customs have any update on what can be done to facilitate the importing and exporting of these agricultural produce? Beyond what agriculture submitted as an update? Mr. Scambaluri?
I think the Department of Agriculture has mentioned everything that what's all going on right now for exporting, and mostly for the importing is most of the items that are coming in don't need the proper permitting with regards to agriculture items that are coming in from destinations. For the export side, that is a kind of a new thing for Guam, is in exporting agriculture items to foreign countries and all. So those are the things that the government or the agencies, the Department of Agriculture is looking in regards to treating agriculture items for export to countries that are basically like what are you saying, duty free, and pineapple, I think even corn and certain agriculture things that want to be exported to some certain countries that during the seasonal time that are not available within their time frame, that we could supply those countries that don't have the capability of getting those type of fruits or even vegetables.
Yeah, earlier
So there is a market.
Yeah, earlier I talked about what our the Association of Mariana Islands Mayors and Vice Mayors and Elected Municipal Council Members, what they're proposing at their last meeting. It was to establish a free trade zone for agricultural products. Any idea how that'll work? Senator Tamanya? Okay, go ahead. Yeah. Then we'll go back to this free trade thing that the mayors are asking us to look into.
Thank you, Chair. This is in terms of the agricultural produce. I understand that Rhoda is the nearby island that really supplies Guam in terms of the agricultural produce, in mainly the rooted products. So because of this, I understand that there are some requirements in taking, in terms of certification as well. The producer, which is the exporting, and the importing, which is probably the agents that are receiving. Rhoda is not really aware of the needed informations in terms of what are the requirements to satisfy the custom or quarantine in terms of importing this produce. I heard that there's some restrictions in terms of these melon flies, but are there any other restrictions in terms of certification? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Maybe I could answer half, and the department could answer the other half. As anytime there's any exports or importation from the Northern Marianas or any other countries or any islands, there is a listing within the permitting process, which is done by Department of Agriculture. What's restricted and what's not, and what's prohibited to come in, and what is permitted to come in. So maybe I could hand it over to Department of Agriculture because they do the permitting. And to get those permits, that means you're going to plan to import produce.
Okay, Mr. Borja?
Yes, that's correct. Plant inspection facility, we're working with the counterparts USDA, APHIS, which is the Animal Plant Health Inspection Service. They have a list of what can and what may not be able to come in due to any kind of restriction. But with the proximity of Rhoda, Saipan, and Guam, there are some that doesn't really affect in terms of getting a permit. However, there's two things. One is for either personal use or for commercial. Now, if you're looking at that, it's still required because it's a live product. It's a live product that may harbor some kind of disease or insect larva. You still need to get some kind of permit to identify the origin, the carrier, and destination as to what it is also and how much, so that we can see to make sure that there's no live viruses or any microorganisms that might be there. It's like a screening thing, but then there's a fee associated to that. So normally it's like a $5 permit fee.
Yes, in terms of certification and permitting, but what I would also like to know is certification in terms of what can be done with these products or produce. Like for instance, in applying these insecticides or any kind of chemicals for for vegetable produce. A lot of the times, the produce are imported to Guam and they were rejected at the port of entry due to the fact that they were asked, do you have the permit to, in terms of your application of these pesticides? So that we cannot answer it right there because we do not know what are the requirements, probably from the USDA or from Guam's quarantine. So, thank you.
I believe I can touch bases on that briefly. I believe some of the produce coming into Guam in regards to commercial use, there is a requirement here by from US EPA to Guam EPA to have a core card training to say that you are actually knowledgeable of the safe handling of pesticides. You are not going to be abusive of your pesticides because it's going to be traceable back to you, accountable. So there's a tracking system. Plus, if you notice that in the past years, Department of Public Health and Social Services have conducted residue analysis testing on some of the fruits and vegetables in Guam and have come up with some positive hits. And with that is the major concern. So we want to make sure that whatever is coming to the table, from farm to table, we want to make sure that it is safe, for one thing, but the actual use of certain pesticides are registered and labeled for that vegetable. So that's where the requirement, Guam EPA will be able to address your core training requirements and whatever vegetables that you may want to bring in. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, whenever I go to the grocery store, I see bananas from Mexico. I see oranges from Florida. And I ask myself, how is it so easy for them to bring their products here, and yet I can't see a sweet potato from Rhoda? And why is it so hard, or what are the challenges that our neighbors are having bringing their stuff over to here when we can be bringing them in from halfway around the world? So what is agriculture doing with the orange plantation in Florida that's making it so easy for them? And how can we make it just as easy for the CNMI? Whenever I see these things, it just baffles me. I mean, we got great bananas growing down there in the FSM. You know, we have breadfruit falling off the tree down there. We have all kinds of produce just in our region alone. But all of our shelves are stocked from stuff that's been brought in here from thousands and thousands of miles away. And when I hear all of these restrictions, I just ask myself, how are they able to do it? And how are we not able to do it? And how can we make those two lines meet? Because we're obviously able to meet from much farther away. So how do we fix that? I mean, it cannot be that difficult if we're able to do it with these companies that are from much farther away.
Thank you, Senator. My answer to that is that yes, we do receive a lot of the imports from the mainland and other countries. However, they still go through the same procedure of getting permits and stuff. Plus, the wholesaler that's receiving it must also get a permit from us, and it's also being checked. Some of the stuff, like the oranges stuff, that if we can locally grow it here, we'll grow it here. But we have major disease with the canker and the fungus that's actually wiping out our tangerines and lemon trees. So we do not know the extent of whether things that may be grown here is going to be tolerant to the diseases here, plus the weather. But yes, we are still getting sweet potato in from Rhoda. I've seen it in the flea markets. I've seen it in some stores. But the volume and the time of the year, the demand also is maybe greater now for cherry tomatoes to be coming in from off island than it is to be produced now. So the time period also is very important, because when we get more imports, it's because production is lower because of some weather conditions, or it's cannot be grown in a certain time. The other question that is that the imports are less in terms of price per pound, because the labor is cheaper from where it's been coming from. And so in competition with local produce, we just don't have the volume as well, but it is trickling in. I know I see, like I said, I see a lot of the taro, and most of the time when there's a big party or get together here in Guam, most of that is coming from Rhoda. Don't mistake me, but they're still coming in, but it's just not enough to be everywhere, the amounts. But yes, we are trying to see what other ways that we can entice more production in Guam and CNMI to localize, so that we don't have to import anything. At least we can grow 32 types of vegetables here in Guam that is commonly grown in the States as well. And it's just a challenge. But we need to create facilities like greenhouses to protect tomato plants during the rainy season so they can pollinate and produce cherry tomatoes. Right now, they're bringing in several thousands and thousands of tonnage of cherry tomatoes just because it's not commonly grown at this time of the year.
I think what we need to do, Mr. Chairman, is get a listing of everything that you guys want to import into Guam. A whole list of all the stuff that you guys want to bring over here. And we need to get that list over to agriculture here on Guam and look and cross-reference and say, okay, these are all the things that you want to bring in. These are all the requirements that need to be met in order for them to be brought here. And then facilitate that and send it over to our partners over here in the CNMI so that, you know, everything is made easier. So that we're able to facilitate that, because, you know, their economic development is our economic development. You know, Mariana's, you know, one community. And I would much rather be eating products that's being grown over there than eating something that's grown over in wherever. You know, I'd even pay a little bit more for that. You know, even if the economies of scale aren't there, I know that I'm buying local, you know, local Marianas. So I think that might be a good place to start, finding out exactly what it is that you guys want to have brought in here, produce-wise. get a whole list together of what you guys think you may be able to export on whatever volume basis, and then send it to our agriculture department and make sure that they are getting all the support they need on our side to be able to bring it in and get them on the shelves. Because I think that, I mean, the market will only grow and the volumes will only grow if the demand is able to be facilitated. But if they're not able to, why am I going to grow, 50 acres of something when I know that I won't be able to bring it over? So supply and demand have to match, and demand cannot be there if there's an impediment to supply, and the supply won't be there if the regulations and the cooperation is inhibiting them from being able to actually find the markets they're looking for. So I think that'd be another good place to start, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, and along those lines, the Department of Agriculture used to maintain a list of all the fruits and vegetables that are being imported to Guam. And we had this discussion recently, and I believe there's a new law that we passed that required that those items be tracked, and a listing will be updated, and it'll serve two purposes: one, for the local farmers to see what the demand is and how many Chiquita bananas they're importing, and then so they can develop a local market, like Senator Nicholas pointed out, along with what we would share that list to with the CNMI, our counterparts, to see what they can be able to produce. Because if you have a demand, the supply will be there. Seriously, and that's been our issue in agriculture. I was aware of that. So there's another suggestion for this communique that the speaker is going to be developing with our staff here. These action items, Senator Tamaño, and then the speaker has a follow-up. Speaker Dylan Guerrero.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I promise this will be the last question. Yes, when it comes to agriculture, I'm very sensitive. And because the CNMI actually is well known to be islands of greens. So one of the questions that I'd like to toast this out to the quarantine or the custom is that if a passenger arrives here in Guam with baggage or cargo or whatever, more than 50 pounds, that individual is asked to go get a permit, especially arriving on a Saturday, Sunday, in a weekends. How can that individual go to the Department of Agriculture, obtain this permit to clear like 2 sacks of taro or a box of vegetable that weighs more than 50 pounds? The requirement is 50 pounds. Is there any flexibility between the policies of the quarantine or the custom to make it durable for our CNMI passengers in arriving to Guam, not coming in as businesses for commercial supplies, but rather for personal consumption in terms of guput, we do always donate for the parties, funerals, and so forth. But that individual had to put that, or the passengers had to put that, just on the side and not clearing it because the permit is missing. And that individual cannot obtain permit because that is not as stable, let's say, arrivals here in Guam. So how can we make this as a flexible policy and not trying to penalize that individual from bringing in such 50 or 100 pounds? And I do have some more, but I'm going to quit for now. Thank you.
No, you're fine. I think from the body language here, it looks like the assistant chief is going to take this, or chief.
I'll give him a chance.
Okay. So, Mr. Paris.
Thank you. Well, one of the things that we do is we have a memorandum of understanding with the local Department of Agriculture. And for the most part, whenever items are brought in over 50 pounds, there are times when officers, if they take a look at the item, and they have some latitude in allowing for exemptions. But one of the things that you could do is, like, if you're traveling with more than one, you could have the other person claim another part of that as part of, like 2 people claiming like 75 pounds. It's like, what, 35 pounds a piece? Otherwise, like, if it's done on a Saturday, we have no control over the business hours of the permitting office. That is outside our control.
And I'll expand again. If we're here to work together, and we're the agency also. We want to work for agriculture. If they just put some type of amendment or just rescind the last memo says that there's restrictions anything over 50, or if we're not at the airport going over 51 pounds and then we take everything or ask you to get a permit. We're pretty flexibility. What Major Vince said, they could split it up within the family. But once they're traveling by themselves and they carry a couple 100 pounds or so, we try to follow within the letter of the laws or the letter of the regulations that agriculture puts out. If they go over a certain amount, then they'll need the permitting. So a lot of our officers are very keen and very strict to the T about following what is put out and noticed by the agriculture. So if we're here to work together, and if there's something there that we need
But
to
it
remove,
seems like that's a policy that can be changed by
That's right.
someone's discretionary authority. I mean, what's the difference between 50 pounds and 70 pounds?
well, there's so many variables that
20
you can
pounds?
say is that some people will bring in, they'll say it's for a fandango, but basically they're coming in every other day or every other week, and it's for commercial purposes. So there's those things that we have to look at, and there's not abuse coming from the Northern Marianas,
but I venture to ask, even if it's for commercial purposes, what's the difference? And what we're trying to do is promote free trade from our islands, and we're looking for some reciprocity too. So. Speaker Ben.
Yeah, I was just kind of curious. It seems to be a Department of Agriculture rule. What's the basis for the rule, John? What's the statutory authority for that rule?
Per statutory thing, I don't have it in my head right now, but you can always call the plant inspection facility on a weekday, and you can fax what you're going to bring in, and they'll fax you the form actually. And then you can fax what you're going to bring in, and then that will suffice for the permit for the extra poundage. But I would definitely get in touch with the plant inspection facility to see how this can be worked out to make it more efficiently workable, manageable for.
But is the 50-pound limit, where
That's
is it contained in statute or regulation?
I can't say anything right now. I wasn't prepared for this. But I do know that it's been prior in the past has always been the rule. But I'll get back to the committee on those things.
No, Doc, they're not testing for Anaplasmosis in taro.
No, he's going to give us a portion of our statute. That
Oh,
says
okay, yeah, go ahead. Okay, Dr. De La Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I used to be a collaborator for the U.S. Department of Agriculture Food Safety and Inspection Service until just this year, May this year. FSIS decided that the time has come for them to take over the meat inspection, mandatory federal meat inspection from our helping out, for some reason that is up to now, we don't know. But the reason for the 50-pound limit is because of their regulation. It's not a local regulation. And they allow 50 pounds per passenger of uninspected, usually uninspected meat, to come from the States, Hawaii, or even from a place like Australia, New Zealand, where foreign animal diseases of importance are not present, like foot and mouth disease, hog cholera, like that, yeah. So that is USDA Food Safety and Inspection Service regulation. Now, I think that if we can ask FSIS, Food Safety and Inspection Service, to change the regulation, I think they can allow, the amount per passenger to be increased at least double to 100 pounds, maybe because of, well, the need for that. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, anything else? Oh yeah, I'm sorry, Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thank you. You were waiting patiently.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a similar issue, and it has to do with the Guam Customs and Quarantine inspection of agricultural commodities and even perishable items. Mr. Ernie Torres also raised the issue with the House during our meeting. It had to do with how inspections are done, and I think he relayed his experience trying to bring in, let's say, beef, I think, to his family share. I'm not sure if he was trying to sell it, but the experience was that, especially with flights like Freedom Air that come during, like evenings or weekends or non-working hours, sometimes inspectors are not available. Freedom Air personnel have actually given him the names of inspectors to contact, off-duty inspectors, to contact and to pay to come in to inspect his cargo so it can be released. And with especially perishables, if it doesn't get inspected promptly, it could risk spoilage. And the other issue is just we're wondering if there are personnel on payroll during these odd hours that can do the inspections, because what ends up happening is Mr. Torres would have to not just pay someone, but pay overtime for someone who's not on payroll, and especially when only those inspectors that are available are the really high-ranking ones, then you're talking about not just paying small overtime, but pretty high overhead. And so that, it may be small, but I was just wondering if some of our officials here can maybe enlighten us as to, is that, we don't have people on, what do you call this? You don't have them, I know that your staff would know the flights coming in, even those flights at night. So wouldn't you have people that would be ready to inspect them?
Well, from the customs standpoint, the airport operation is run at the cargo section from 8 to 5, Monday to Friday, closed on Saturdays and Sundays. The airport is run on a 24-hour base with a staff of probably 48 guys running 3 shifts. Cargo is closed at 5 o'clock. After that, if an individual wants to clear their items, not perishable, any items after 5, there's a service that is available for individuals that want to clear after I like what you said, the unusual hours, if in 2, 3, 4 in the morning, or 10 o'clock at night or 11, because the airport is running within 24 hours. There's multiple flights. We got close to 4,000 passengers coming in a day. So we do not have, I wish I could run a cargo facility that's 24 hours run under the government of Guam time, but we don't have the capacity or the capability of having officers at the cargo section from 5 a.m. to the next morning running another shift, another 2 more shifts, when we only have cargo that's coming in maybe at 2,200 or 2,100. There's only one consignee. So it is not financially smart for the agency to have a staff sitting around to clear 1 or 2. And that's the reason why I recommend to any importer that wants to bring in cargo, so they have the capability of clearing the next day at 8 o'clock. That's if something that can survive up to 8. But if it's fresh produce or fresh meat or something like that, and they know they're bringing it in, and they know that customs is closed on Saturdays and Sundays, or we're all closed at 5, there's multiple times of arrivals of flights that come in from 8 to 5, and I think I have a schedule that Major Vince has. They have multiple flights that come in from, I think, 2, 3, 4, 10, or 11, like that. But they have that time frame that they can plan out, because when they do get their permits, they know when they get their permits, they know what time they're going to come in. So, yes, there is overtime. And their overtime is to compensate the officer for coming into that odd time to come in to clear cargo. But I wish I could have cargo and the commercial port operation run 24 hours. Then there'll be no overtime, that it will exist, but it's always going to occur because Customs is only running 122 officers at this time, not minusing people that are on like any other agency in the law enforcement that have deployments, leaves, paternity leaves, sick leave, and all. So if you break it down, the numbers are real small, and it's really not feasible for me to, or the director, to have our cargo facility open 24 hours. I wish I have the numbers of 200 officers. I will run the cargo 24 hours, and I will accommodate all the consignees that need cargo to release 2 to 3 and 4 or 5 in the morning. There are consignees out there that clear at 4 in the morning, 3 in the morning, and they do it almost every day. I don't work overtime. It's prohibited by law for me to work any overtime. Plus, the person will be broke by the time they pay my overtime. But everyone in the cycle or everyone in the roster are eligible to work overtime. And how it's done is that the consignee will call up that they need someone to clear their cargo at 10 o'clock at night, unusual time. That is nothing happening on a cargo. There's no movement or any release of cargo, which is very rare to have something, not rare, but it doesn't happen until the next day because everyone wants to clear cargo at 8 o'clock because it's free. It's on the government time. And then those are the options they have to call the airport, ask who's the next officer available to come in and clear their cargo. It's done by a standby list which goes alphabetically. Unfortunately, I think our director is trying to look into a flat rate, and that's something that we're looking at in the hopefully soon. Maybe we've been talking about this collectively in recent months. So I understand your sympathy, and I understand. And it's not just the Northern Marianas. There's people that bring in cargo after hours, after 5 o'clock when we're closed. And we always say that there is the avenue for you to wait till the next morning, or if you want to clear it, there is that opportunity, that component for you to ask for customer service overtime. So it's not that we're holding anyone to say you got to pay overtime. You could wait the next day, but if you need your perishable items, you can clear it. But eventually, there is a system until I get that proper manpower to run cargo and the commercial port. I would definitely give that services out and make the government want to pay for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that, did I answer the question? Or?
Well, I was going to recognize Mr. Torres, who wanted to add
Let me clarify. The flights we're talking about are cargo flights, once a week. And they arrive, Freedom Air is supposed to arrive about 5:30, 6 o'clock, and there are times that they are late. This is a situation we're talking about, not 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Cargo flights, once a week. I think a simple solution is to stagger personnel to cover that airline when it comes in after 5 o'clock. It's not a 3 a.m. call. It's one cargo flight per week that needs service. That's all it is.
Could I mention something? Yes, you may be right. There's one cargo flight that we could staff, but then we're going to have to staff everyone else to be fair and give fairness across the board with all the other consignees that want to clear at 3 o'clock in the morning. So it'll be suicidal for me to just dedicate one officer to take care of one type of consignee when there's about multiple of cargo personnel, cargo people that want to clear their cargo at 3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, there is a lot of people that want to clear cargo, but we have to wait. They wait till 8 o'clock. But once again, we don't have the personnel to run 3 shifts at the cargo section. I mean, 2 shifts.
If I could make a comment on the personnel, several years ago we had over 215 officers. We are now down to 124. We have a cycle that we are very proud of. Almost, hopefully it will graduate in January. We're trying to really beef up the manpower. It is a goal of mine, so that we be able to get to the proper manning level, so that we can in fact properly man cargo as well as the airport. It's in everybody's interest to work together and to do this. Again, it took some time to go from 214 to 124, but and it may take a little time to go from 124 up to around 200. But we are trying to grow grow our force so that we can meet the needs of both the cargo needs, and it is a need. It is things we're trying to do, and at the airport, at the seaport also. And as well as, of course, our passenger service that we're growing. So it is something. It is a challenge. Manpower is a challenge, and right now I cannot really fill that shift, with the people we have now. But we are in fact trying to grow that force.
If I may also add, there's approximately 6 different flights that come in from the CNMI that comes from Freedom Air, Star Marianas, and they're all before 5 o'clock. So maybe one of the things that we could do is possibly, if people are aware that these flights come in prior to 5 o'clock, people have brought in cargo. I'm looking at numbers here. It's approximately 3,695 pounds of produce on an average of 7 days using all the different flights. I've got the earliest flight is like 10:35. Then you've got 13:41 hours, you got 13:56 hours, 14:30 hours. There are a few flights that happen after 1700 hours, and that's probably where you would want to probably stay away from if you're trying to save on money. But yes, there are flights, and they do bring in cargo, and 14:30 hours is like 902 pounds of produce, 100 pounds at 12:47. So it's not to say that you can't bring it in. You just have to probably schedule, if you understand what time the flights are coming in or leaving from the CNMI into Guam, and then plan accordingly. Thank you.
Just
Speaker?
a small comment. I know you guys probably feel like you're on the hot seat, but I do want to also thank you for lifting your restrictions on beetle knot. It really helped me on this trip. So, thank you.
So they waived the 50-pound rule?
We're used to being in the hot seat. Only once a year.
Senator Regis? Pete? Senator Regis. Okay. Yes, Senator.
Okay, I've been there in custom for a long time, and we went through the same experience. Perhaps if we don't want to have problems with our friends from customs, this is the initial get together with CNMI and Guam, trying to identify problems that may help improve the relationship and improve trade between Guam and CNMI. Perhaps later when CNMI begin to experience importing from Guam, we may have to start talking to our custom officers in CNMI too, because I believe that when I left customs, we were having the same problems, and we need to put people on standby to inspect those odd hours where cargoes are coming in. So it really is no different from what you guys are doing here and what we were doing in the CNMI. But this is at the beginning where we can dialogue and exchange ideas and find ways to maybe relax some of the inspection that goes on, but it can be done, and but we need to give it time. So I just want to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. And of course, that's why we're here, to have some kind of resolution and some kind of in the dialogue and to find out what we need to do to improve trade. And we're not saying we can't do it. We're going to try to figure out how we're going to have some type of resolution. So it's not saying no, but at least we're have some kind of dialogue. And I know we've gone back many years concerning customs, and I know Saipan Customs comes once a year for softball tournament, and you guys usually beat us.
And I also like to say, and I do agree that this is a form, again, the first MILA assembly, but we're looking forward to not just the second one, but the 1.3, 1.2, in between. And I'm hoping that we can use this as an opportunity to build momentum, to have those discussions. We will, in fact, look at each and every opportunity and every option, what we can do. And I'm hoping to get those kind of comments from you, and for us to there's 1,000 ways to skin the cat, perhaps, and we can see what we can do. I just want to let you know that we would take, that's why I have my notepad, because I certainly want to take each and every concern that you have and then get back to everybody about how we can do it and how we actually can solve these issues. And I think the more times we talk to each other and build in a crawl, walk, run, let's get those low-hanging fruit solved, and maybe we can go aspire for bigger or higher reaching fruit. But I'm really appreciative of this time. We're going to listen to you. I take everything seriously, and it's a concern. And I'll tell you right now, I have more relatives in Saipan than Guam. My father was born in Saipan, and when I go to Saipan, the first thing I have to let them know who I am, because I know I have to mangingi. But the point is, we're close. We're certainly, we need to work together. And so all these questions, all these concerns, and you may have some later on that you're going to think about. You forgot to bring it up here, but I'm going to make sure. I brought a lot of cards. I gave several of you, my members, cards, but I have much more, and I want to make sure each and everybody has my card, so you can communicate with me directly with my email or phone call. And like I said, and Mr. Sablan was here in the softball tournament. So again, we want to be able to build this relationship. I'm really appreciative of being here today. Again, we don't want to say no. We want to say, well, that's a good point. Let's see what we can do. And I hope that same we will reciprocate, and we will each enlighten everybody's mind, each and every one. So thank you.
Another one, Senator, that eventually we'll have to have the airlines to have some kind of cooperation in regards to this matter, because they're a big factor in regards to the time of arrival and departure also too.
Okay, let's hear from Congressman Beneventi. Did you have your? You were
pretty much. I was going to issue the same issue, noticing and a good concern in terms of what was mentioned earlier in terms of customs officer, seeing an individual continuously coming, ready for uncle, for auntie, for the family use, and he's there almost every other week, so that's suspicious. If I was a customer, I'd charge him too, but if he's here once a month, then it's, so that's a trade zone. That's not it's automatically money making. So, in considering the family issues, I hope that you can understand, because families also do pay an excess baggage, and they come in here, then they get confiscated. It's really sad that these things happen. So hopefully we can work out some things that eventually you guys can consider. And I thank you for trying your best, doing your best. Thank you.
If I may, then I don't mean to interrupt at all the conversation that's taking place, the dialogue, because we're accomplishing a lot. And we didn't want this to be just an opportunity to dialogue. We wanted it to be action-oriented as well. So I've already asked legal counsels, all the guys you see behind us, who are taking notes, to actually put some resolutions together. So, and what Senator Respicio has been doing earlier, if you notice, is that he would always ask, is that, do we have a consensus here that this is what we want to pursue? So before we move on to any other topics, we have already 4 that we would like to just have him relay what those are and get a consensus of what it is that, this body, this group of, members here would like for us to pursue.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. The first one, going back to our first topic, is the established protocol for CNMI and Guam relative to the animal quarantine rules and regulations. Sound right?
No objections or?
And so,
So this is, you'd like for us then to pursue this, okay, thank you.
okay, and following up on a discussion proposed by Senator Nicholas from Guam, is a listing of what CNMI could provide produce-wise, and a listing of all produce imported into Guam and the CNMI. As another general matter for us to pursue, is there consensus? 'Cause I don't, yeah,
Thank
and
you.
then the third one is petition USDA Food Service regarding the changing the regulation to 100 pounds. And then our legal counsel and staff, and when we're offline, you can talk to them to kind of develop that thought a little bit more. But that was the general thought. Do we have consensus? Okay, and then on the last topic, the review of cargo inspection operations with customs and quarantine for flights coming in from CNMI. Just CNMI, focus on what we're doing today. That's to have a free trade between Guam and the CNMI. So, do we have consensus? Mr. Speaker, want to expand that?
Just a small recommendation. This goes back to what Dr. De La Cruz pointed out to us. I wonder if there would be an objection if we can ask or respectfully request the Director of Agriculture to exercise his authority to waive the need for requiring Anaplasmosis inspection until such time that they can establish the formal protocols.
Okay.
Is that any objections to that request?
There's consensus for that, yeah. And Speaker Ben alluded to that too. Yeah. Yeah. Congressman Sablan?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. The last item in regards to custom and inspection services, I'd just like to add to that. I believe in what we're trying to do here is to encourage the exchange of goods, basically from CNMI. So I think it would help if I know customs and quarantine can include in that particular item a potential service charges or inspection charges that we can look at. I know that when you bring in goods like this and the incoming passenger is finds themselves incurring additional charges for such as overtime. I know well, with CNMI immigration, basically that's what we do. Travelers that come in and arrive at certain time of the night, basically we bill them through the airlines on overtime charges, and this is basically computed pursuant to the inspectors that does the inspection duty. So if I ask that we have customs and Guam customs and quarantine look at or come up with a listing of potential charges, I think that would help. Thank you.
Sen, I'll defer to our oversight chair for customs before getting customs.
I think that's Mr. Sablan. I certainly appreciate your suggestion, and I think that's going to have to be or may have to be reinforced by legislation so that in fact they don't deviate too much. So I think in all fairness, with regards to free trade, I think certainly agree with you. That's a component that if in fact there's one cargo shipment on every single week, that perhaps we can work it with customs and quarantine, work with them so that if in fact they need reinforcement by legislation, so that in fact it would be a continuous operational expense rather than an arbitrary decision on a weekly basis, then certainly we'll work with them in that regard. Because the cost is always a factor, And keep in mind that the fees that they just recently adjusted may be able to incorporate that as part of their regular operations if in fact it's an authorized activity. So I think Customs and Quarantine would be in line in terms of being able to support the free trade concept, obviously with the concurrence of their boss.
Can I?
Okay, Chief?
Senator, you're absolutely right. You know, just for informational purposes, we do not charge overtime at the airport on passengers and their cargo, their goods and their baggage. We don't charge any passenger overtime with their goods coming in. The only time there is charges of overtime, which is the carrier service overtime, is at the cargo section from 5 p.m. to the next morning, which is 5 a.m. So there's no overtime charged to a passenger when they arrive from any destination.
But what we're asking is for
Just for
you
clar-
to
just for
review
information.
your operational
Sure. We understand, Senator.
policy, so that way it wouldn't be an overtime charge. It would be part of your 24/7.
Eventually, we
Yeah.
were looking also for regards to the adjustment of our cargo fees and all, and if we could recapture those things to not pass it on, or basically on these overtimes and all, we could. Those are the things, and that's why we're sitting around here to some type of resolution. And I'd like to thank Senator Nog in regards to that.
Okay, Congressman Yomo.
Thank you, Chairman. Also, I'd like to basically expand on some listing from the Director of Agriculture, which is basically a listing of pesticides that are prohibited, at least because, as you know, the Sinamay has a lot of foreign farmers, and in order for us basically to improve the export of produce to Guam, we want to also educate our farmers on what pesticides, what not to use, and that way we can, you know, at least be assured that the produce that are coming out of the Sinamay is safe. So you know, we need that listing. I myself was once a exterminator, at one point owner, so I know what pesticides are coming in that are illegal for, at least for commercial use, but I'm not too familiar with in the farming area, so I would like to see what listings that might help our farmers too as well. Thank you.
Okay, is there a consensus for that we add that to the communique? Yeah. Okay, I want to, we all want to thank the panel here, particularly the acting Director of the Department of Agriculture. Thank you, and also our Director of Guam Customs and Quarantine. They have somewhere to go at 4 o'clock. They have a cabinet meeting. And so as you go to your cabinet meeting, just understand that the Governor of Guam and the Governor of the CNMI, they have also been having regional meetings. So a lot of the issues we're discussing are going to overlap into the executive branch, as well as our mayors and vice mayors and all elected council offices are all really hot on this issue of free trade and everything associated with this topic. And so, Mr. Perez, do you have to leave too?
Senator, my chief and major will remain here to answer and entertain any questions. Of course, we're going to get together and
maybe take Ralph. Just kidding.
But unfortunately, he just stepped out to the restroom. He'll be back. So,
Okay.
but you know, we're going to maintain our customs.
Ralph,
attendance here.
He said he has to leave, but both of you can say, I said, maybe take Ralph.
They
No,
told me
you
they leave
stay.
1 minute after I leave. No, they're not. They're going to stay.
No, thank you,
But, you know,
Director.
again, I want to thank you for inviting, Guam Customs, myself personally. But again, I look forward to more communications, and you have my card, and I look forward to any and all communications so that we can, solve the small problems before they get bigger.
And
So-
can we give these two gentlemen, because they're leaving now, give them a round of applause for their participation.
Oh, you want me to leave?
No, you stay.
Yeah. No, you can stay. I'm gonna get a phone call from your mom. Okay, and anything else, colleagues? Yeah. Okay. Before they leave, just one, Director, just 1 second.
Yes,
Senator?
thank you. Before you leave, I would like to find out, because Mr. Scambolari mentioned about overtime rate. on let's say commercial, right? Yes, does your officer being paid through ranks by the whoever is the customer?
Excuse me. They get 3 times their hourly rate. That's based on the public law also too, but that is until there's any changes or what, they will get paid 3 times their hourly rate because due to the fact of the nature that they travel from their residence and the time of the requests, and also to pay to compensate them for their time, and that's public law.
But it's through their ranks.
It's not ranked. It's within their time of service and their pay scale. So you could have an officer, a lieutenant that makes $20-some an hour. You could have an officer 2 that works $20-some an hour. It's up to time of service.
Yes, I had an experience that I had to clear my cargo after working hours, and
Yes.
I paid that lieutenant through his rank.
It's
Thank
through
you.
their, not their rank, but it's their time of service and their rate, their hourly rate.
Okay.
Well, to some degree, it is their rank, but what the chief is trying to say is that officers have different times of tenure, so some officers actually make more than others, and the highest ranking person that actually clears items is actually higher than a lieutenant, so just be thankful you didn't get that person.
Thank you. If there's no, Senator Uggan?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question, and I think that this is directly in follow-on to the inquiry that was made in terms of the cost of the customs inspection. I think perhaps another component that we can look at is if there are any additional taxes that are assessed for the importation of goods coming from the respective islands. Let's say, for example, in Guam, I don't know legally whether we have that much flexibility with the gross receipts taxes unless it's above and beyond what is already being realized. But we could conceivably, if it's authorized legally, we could forego the gross receipts taxes, which is an additional expense, just based on this activity for any transshipment of goods or services originating from the CNMI to Guam. And likewise, the reverse question would be, are there any taxes or fees that are assessed in CNMI for any goods and services that originate from Guam? Because if, in fact, this is going to be truly a free trade environment and a free economic zone, so to speak, we need to look at all these facets, such as the cattle, such as other livestock, such as fruits and vegetables, but then also try to provide some financial relief for the businesses that would like to participate in the free trade between Guam and CNMI. So I would like to inquire, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Yes. Can you make that in the form of a motion to be included as part of the communique that we resolved to explore that?
Please, Mr. Chairman, if we can inquire, I can put in a motion move to do some research in regards to any potential financial incentives that can be established that are pre-existing in regards to our tax structure. A good example is the GRTs and some of like the user's fee and whatnot. So, Mr. Chairman, if I can move.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a motion by Senator Uggan, second by everybody else. Are we in agreement? Okay, we're in agreement.
Thank you, Mr.
Huh? You can vote. We're going to take a short break. I'll probably come back in 10 minutes, but before we do that, I want to dismiss the remaining 3 gentlemen, Dr. De La Cruz, Mr. Scambaluri, and Mr. Perez, and also ask that we give them a round of applause. And then when we come back, we'll talk about item 3 is inter-island air travel and some discussion on coordinated tourism strategies. So, thank you.